In the heart of the countryside, Jake Mitchell's farm stands as a testament to his family's legacy, a sprawling expanse of fertile land that has been nurtured by generations. For Jake, this farm is not just a piece of property. It embodies the values of hard work, tradition, and a deep connection to the land that his ancestors cultivated. However, this idyllic rural life faces an imminent threat from Karen Whitmore, a staunch advocate for the local Homeowners Association, HOA, and its stringent regulations. Karen, representing the suburban ideals of order and conformity, sees Jake's farm as an eyesore that disrupts the carefully curated aesthetic of the community. Her vision of a pristine neighborhood clashes violently with Jake's way of life, setting the stage for a conflict that will test the very fabric of their community. As the HOA's enforcer, Karen believes that her role is to uphold standards that ensure property values remain high and that the neighborhood retains its suburban charm. She views Jake's farm, with its rustic charm and occasional disarray, as a violation of these standards, a blemish on the otherwise manicured landscape. This perception fuels her determination to impose regulations that would force Jake to conform to her vision of what a community should look like. For Jake, the farm is a sanctuary, a place where he can honor his family's history and continue the legacy that has been passed down through the generations. He is deeply rooted in the traditions of rural life, where the land is not merely a commodity, but a source of pride and identity. The thought of losing this connection to his heritage is unbearable, and he is resolute in his fight to protect his family's legacy against the encroaching suburban ideals that Karen represents. As tensions rise, the conflict between Jake and Karen escalates, with each side digging in their heels. Jake's determination to preserve his way of life stands in stark contrast to Karen's unwavering commitment to enforcing HOA regulations. The battle over land and community standards becomes a microcosm of the larger struggle between rural values and suburban conformity. Jake's farm, once a peaceful haven, transforms into a battleground where the stakes are not just about property lines but about the very essence of community and identity. As the conflict unfolds, it becomes clear that this is not merely a dispute over land. It is a clash of ideologies. Jake embodies the spirit of independence and self-sufficiency that defines rural life, while Karen represents the desire for order and uniformity that often characterizes suburban living. Their opposing views highlight the broader societal tensions between those who cherish tradition and those who advocate for modernity and regulation. The ensuing battle over Jake's farm will not only determine the fate of his family's legacy, but also challenge the community to confront its values and priorities. As neighbors take sides, the conflict serves as a catalyst for discussions about what it means to belong to a community and how differing lifestyles can coexist. Ultimately, the clash between Jake Mitchell and Karen Whitmore is more than just a personal feud. It is a reflection of the ongoing struggle between rural and suburban identities, a struggle that will resonate far beyond the boundaries of their small town. Before the storm of conflict brewed on the horizon, Jake Mitchell's life on his farm was a picture of idyllic tranquility, a serene existence steeped in the beauty of nature and the rich legacy of his ancestors. Nestled amidst rolling hills and lush fields, Jake's farm was a sanctuary where the air was filled with the sweet scent of wildflowers and the gentle rustle of leaves danced in the breeze. Each morning, as the sun peeked over the horizon, casting a golden hue across the landscape, Jake would rise with the dawn, ready to embrace the day ahead. The soft chirping of birds served as his alarm clock, a natural symphony that welcomed him to the world outside. He would step out onto the porch, a steaming cup of coffee in hand, and take a moment to soak in the breathtaking views that surrounded him. The sight of the sun illuminating the dew-kissed grass and the distant mountains painted a picture of peace that filled his heart with gratitude. This land was not just a farm. It was a living testament to the generations of Mitchells who had toiled and nurtured it, instilling in Jake a profound sense of connection to his roots. Each corner of the property held memories of his ancestors, his grandfather teaching him how to plant seeds, his father sharing stories of the harvest that had sustained their family through thick and thin. This legacy was woven into the very soil, and Jake felt a deep responsibility to honor it by continuing the traditions that had been passed down through the years. Daily routines on the farm brought Jake immense joy, each task a reminder of the simple pleasures that life had to offer. Mornings were often spent tending to the animals, the soft bleating of sheep and the gentle clucking of chickens creating a comforting backdrop to his work. He relished the moments spent in the barn, where he would feed the livestock and check on their well-being, feeling a sense of fulfillment in caring for the creatures that depended on him. The bond he shared with them was palpable, a reflection of the harmony that existed between man and nature on his farm. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Jake would turn his attention to the fields, where rows of crops swayed gently in the wind. He found solace in the rhythm of planting, weeding, and harvesting, each action a dance with the earth that brought him closer to the land he loved. The satisfaction of seeing the fruits of his labor flourish was unmatched, a reward that filled him with pride and purpose. Afternoons were often spent in the company of his family, sharing laughter and stories over hearty meals made from the produce they had grown together. These gatherings were a celebration of their shared heritage, a time to reflect on the past while looking forward to the future. The warmth of their connections and the joy of their shared experiences created an atmosphere of love and support that enveloped Jake like a comforting blanket. As the day drew to a close, Jake would often take a moment to sit on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. In those quiet moments, he felt a profound sense of peace, knowing that he was living a life deeply rooted in tradition and connection. The tranquility of his farm was a reflection of his soul, a place where he could be himself, surrounded by the beauty of nature and the legacy of his ancestors. Little did he know that this idyllic existence was about to be challenged, but for now, Jake reveled in the simple joys that his farm provided, a sanctuary of peace in a world that was about to change. Karen Whitmore strode into the community with an air of authority that was hard to ignore. With her meticulously styled hair and perfectly pressed attire, she embodied the very essence of suburban perfection. A self-appointed guardian of the neighborhood, Karen had taken it upon herself to uphold the standards set forth by the Homeowners Association (HOA), believing that her role was crucial in maintaining the aesthetic and value of community. Her personality was a blend of determination and rigidity, characterized by an unwavering commitment to rules and regulations that she believed were essential for a harmonious living environment. Karen's obsession with community standards bordered on fanaticism. She could often be found patrolling the neighborhood, clipboard in hand, ready to document any perceived infractions. To her, the HOA guidelines were not just suggestions but sacred laws that must be followed to the letter. This fervor for conformity made her a polarizing figure among her neighbors, some appreciating her dedication while others found her overbearing. It was this very obsession that led her to Jake Mitchell's farm, a place she viewed as a glaring deviation from the pristine image she envisioned for their community. The initial confrontation between Karen and Jake was as inevitable as it was tense. One sunny afternoon, armed with a list of alleged violations, Karen approached Jake as he was tending to his crops. The moment she stepped onto his property, the atmosphere shifted. The tranquility of the farm was suddenly overshadowed by her presence. With a steely gaze, she wasted no time in addressing what she deemed unacceptable. "Jake," she began, her tone clipped and authoritative, "we need to talk about your property. It's not in compliance with the HOA standards." Jake, taken aback by her abruptness, paused his work and looked at her, confusion etched on his face. He had always believed that his farm was a cherished part of the community, a place where nature thrived and traditions were honored. But to Karen, it was a blight that needed to be rectified. As she launched into her list of grievances, Jake felt a mix of frustration and disbelief. Karen pointed out the unkempt areas of his land, the wildflowers that grew freely, and the rustic barn that had seen better days. "You need to clear out the weeds, paint the barn, and perhaps even consider landscaping that aligns with the HOA's vision," she insisted, her voice unwavering. Each demand felt like a personal attack on his way of life, and Jake struggled to maintain his composure as he listened to her relentless critique. Karen's vision for Jake's property was one of manicured lawns and uniformity, a stark contrast to the vibrant, organic beauty that characterized his farm. She envisioned a landscape that adhered to the HOA's strict guidelines, where every blade of grass was trimmed to perfection and every flower was carefully curated. To her, Jake's farm represented chaos, a deviation from the suburban ideal she was determined to uphold. As she continued to rattle off her demands, Jake felt a growing sense of indignation. This was not just about property standards. It was about his heritage, his family legacy, and the life he had built on this land. The confrontation marked the beginning of a battle that would pit Karen's rigid adherence to community standards against Jake's deep-rooted connection to his farm. With each passing moment, it became clear that this was not merely a disagreement over aesthetics. It was a clash of values, a struggle between the desire for conformity and the need for authenticity. As Karen walked away, clipboard in hand, Jake stood on his land, grappling with the reality that his peaceful existence was now under threat from a woman who saw his cherished home as nothing more than a violation of her suburban ideals. The sun hung high in the sky, casting a warm glow over Jake Mitchell's farm as he worked diligently in the fields, his hands deep in the rich, dark soil. The peaceful rhythm of his labor was abruptly interrupted by the sound of footsteps crunching on gravel. Jake looked up to see Karen Whitmore approaching, her posture straight and her expression resolute. The moment their eyes met, an unspoken tension filled the air, a palpable clash of ideals that would soon unfold. "Jake Mitchell," Karen called out, her voice carrying an authoritative tone that made it clear she was not there for casual conversation. Jake wiped the sweat from his brow and straightened, bracing himself for what he sensed was coming. "I'm Karen Whitmore, and I represent the Homeowners Association," she continued, her clipboard clutched tightly in her hand. "We need to discuss some concerns regarding your property." Jake's heart sank as he recognized the familiar tone of someone who believed they held the moral high ground. "What concerns?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady despite the irritation bubbling beneath the surface. He had always prided himself on maintaining his farm, and the idea that someone would come to dictate how he should manage his land felt like an affront to his very identity. Karen wasted no time diving into her list of grievances. "Your barn is in disrepair, and the wildflowers are overgrown. The HOA has specific guidelines about property maintenance, and your farm is not in compliance," she stated, her voice unwavering. Each word felt like a jab, and Jake could feel his frustration mounting. To him, the barn was a symbol of his family's history, and the wildflowers were a testament to the natural beauty of rural life. "This is a farm, not a suburban development," he replied, his tone firm. "I'm not interested in turning it into some cookie-cutter property." Karen's eyes narrowed slightly, her determination evident. "Jake, I understand that you have a connection to this land, but the HOA's rules are in place for a reason. They protect property values and ensure that our community remains attractive to potential buyers. We can't have properties that detract from that vision." Her words dripped with a sense of superiority, as if she believed she was the sole arbiter of what constituted a desirable community. Jake shook his head, feeling a mix of anger and disbelief. "This is my family's legacy. I'm not going to change it just because you think it doesn't fit your idea of what a neighborhood should look like. This land has been in my family for generations, and I won't let anyone dictate how I should run it." His voice rose slightly, fueled by the passion he felt for his home. Karen, undeterred, pressed on. "I'm not asking you to change your way of life, but I'm asking you to consider the impact your property has on the neighborhood. If you don't comply with the HOA's standards, you could face fines or even legal action." Her tone was matter-of-fact, as if she were discussing the weather rather than the potential loss of Jake's cherished way of life. The tension between them crackled like electricity, each standing firm in their beliefs. Jake felt a surge of defiance. He would not be bullied into submission. "I'll take my chances," he replied, crossing his arms defiantly. "I'm not going to let you or anyone else dictate how I live on my own land." Karen's expression hardened, her determination unyielding. "I'll be back, Jake. The HOA will not overlook this." With that, she turned on her heel and walked away, leaving Jake standing amidst the fields, his heart racing. The encounter had solidified the divide between them, a stark reminder that their differing perspectives on community and land would lead to an inevitable clash. As he returned to his work, Jake felt a renewed sense of purpose. He would fight to protect his farm and the legacy it represented, no matter the cost. As the days turned into weeks, Karen Whitmore's campaign against Jake Mitchell's farm escalated with a fervor that left the small community buzzing with tension. Fueled by her unwavering belief in the HOA's mission, she began to mobilize her resources, determined to bring Jake's property into compliance with the stringent standards she held dear. It wasn't long before formal complaints were filed, each one meticulously documented and sent to the HOA board, outlining every perceived infraction on Jake's land. Karen's complaints ranged from the condition of the barn to the wildflowers that she deemed overgrown and unsightly. She even went so far as to photograph the farm from various angles, capturing what she considered evidence of neglect. Each complaint was accompanied by a detailed account of how Jake's property was allegedly diminishing the value of the neighborhood, a narrative she was eager to share with anyone who would listen. Jake, however, remained dismissive of her tactics. He had always been a man of the land, grounded in the values of hard work and tradition, and he refused to let Karen's relentless pursuit rattle him. When he received the first formal complaint, he chuckled to himself, shaking his head at the absurdity of it all. "This is ridiculous," he muttered, tossing the letter onto the kitchen table. "She's got nothing better to do than nitpick my farm." To Jake, the complaints felt like a personal attack on his way of life, but he was determined not to let them affect him. He continued to tend to his crops and care for his animals, finding solace in the daily routines that had always brought him joy. But Karen was not one to back down easily. As her complaints went unaddressed, she escalated her campaign further, threatening legal action against Jake. She began to circulate petitions among the neighbors, rallying support for her cause and painting Jake as a rogue element in their otherwise harmonious community. "We can't let one property owner ruin the integrity of our neighborhood," she would say, her voice dripping with conviction. "If we don't stand together, we risk losing everything we've worked for." Her persuasive rhetoric found a few sympathetic ears, and soon, whispers of discontent began to circulate among the residents. The situation reached a boiling point when Karen decided to involve county officials and inspectors. She contacted the local zoning board, claiming that Jake's farm was in violation of several county regulations. Within days, inspectors arrived at the farm, armed with clipboards and a checklist of codes to assess. Jake watched in disbelief as they roamed his property, scrutinizing every detail. "What's the meaning of this?" he demanded, his frustration boiling over. "I'm just trying to run a farm here." The inspectors, caught in the middle of the escalating conflict, explained that they were there to investigate Karen's claims and ensure compliance with local laws. As the inspectors conducted their assessment, Jake felt a mix of anger and helplessness. He had always believed in the integrity of his land and the traditions that came with it, but now he found himself at the mercy of bureaucratic regulations and the relentless pursuit of a neighbor who seemed determined to undermine everything he held dear. "This is absurd," he muttered under his breath, watching as the inspectors took notes and snapped photos. "I'm not breaking any laws. I'm just living my life." Meanwhile, Karen reveled in the chaos she had orchestrated. With each step she took to escalate her campaign, she felt a sense of empowerment, convinced that she was fighting for the greater good of the community. The more Jake resisted, the more determined she became, convinced that her actions were justified in the name of preserving the neighborhood standards. As the conflict deepened, it became clear that this was no longer just a battle over property lines. It was a clash of values, a struggle between the ideals of rural authenticity and suburban conformity. And as the inspectors prepared their report, the stakes grew higher, setting the stage for a confrontation that would test the very fabric of their community. As the pressure from Karen Whitmore and the HOA intensified, Jake Mitchell felt the weight of the conflict bearing down on him. The formal complaints, legal threats, and the involvement of county officials had transformed his once peaceful life into a battleground. Yet, rather than succumbing to despair, Jake resolved to stand his ground and fight for his family's legacy. He knew that he had to prepare for the legal battles ahead, so he began to gather information about the HOA's regulations and local zoning laws. Late into the evenings, he pored over documents, seeking to understand the intricacies of the rules that Karen was wielding against him. He consulted with a local attorney who specialized in property disputes, determined to arm himself with the knowledge and resources necessary to defend his farm. The attorney explained the nuances of the law, helping Jake identify potential weaknesses in Karen's claims. With each meeting, Jake felt a renewed sense of empowerment. He was no longer just a passive victim of circumstance, but an active participant in the fight for his home. In addition to preparing for the legal battle, Jake made the decision to take proactive measures on his farm. He understood that while he would not compromise his values or the essence of his land, he could still make improvements that would demonstrate his commitment to maintaining the property. He rolled up his sleeves and got to work, focusing on areas that Karen had highlighted in her complaints. He repaired the barn, giving it a fresh coat of paint that preserved its rustic charm while also addressing Karen's concerns. He cleared out some of the overgrown weeds and wildflowers, creating designated patches of beauty that showcased the natural landscape without overwhelming it. Jake even planted a small vegetable garden near the house, a vibrant display of colors that not only provided fresh produce for his family, but also served as a testament to his dedication to the land. As he worked, Jake found solace in the rhythm of his labor. Each task completed was a small victory, a way to reclaim his sense of agency in the face of adversity. He took pride in the improvements he was making, knowing that they would not only benefit his farm but also serve as a counterargument to Karen's claims. With every stroke of the paintbrush and every seed planted, he felt a renewed connection to his ancestors, who had fought their own battles to preserve the land they loved. This connection fueled his determination to protect his farm at all costs. Jake's resolve to stand firm against Karen's harassment was unwavering. He refused to be intimidated or bullied into submission. He began to engage with his neighbors, sharing his side of the story and inviting them to see the changes he was making on the farm. Many were surprised to learn about the extent of Karen's campaign and began to rally around Jake, offering their support and solidarity. The sense of community that had once felt threatened began to reemerge, as neighbors recognized the importance of standing together against the encroachment of rigid regulations. As the legal battle loomed on the horizon, Jake felt a sense of purpose that he had not experienced before. He was not just fighting for his farm, he was fighting for the values that defined his way of life. The land was more than just property. It was a living legacy, a connection to his family's history, and a symbol of independence. With each passing day, Jake grew more resolute in his commitment to protect his land and the traditions it represented. He understood that the fight ahead would be challenging, but he was ready to face whatever obstacles lay in his path. With his heart set on preserving his farm, Jake Mitchell stood tall, prepared to defend his home against the relentless campaign of Karen Whitmore and the HOA. As the conflict between Jake Mitchell and Karen Whitmore escalated, the small community found itself divided, caught in the crossfire of a battle that pitted tradition against conformity. The Homeowners Association, HOA, once a seemingly benign entity focused on maintaining property values, became a focal point of contention. Members of the HOA were split in their opinions regarding Karen's aggressive tactics. Some supported her unwavering commitment to enforcing community standards, believing that her actions were necessary to preserve the neighborhood's aesthetic and property values. They argued that Jake's farm, with its rustic charm and occasional disarray, was an eyesore that could deter potential buyers and diminish the appeal of the area. "We can't let one property owner ruin what we've built here," one HOA member proclaimed at a meeting, echoing Karen's sentiments. However, there were others within the HOA who began to question Karen's approach. They felt that her relentless pursuit of compliance was overstepping boundaries, and that her actions were creating unnecessary tension within the community. "We need to find a way to coexist," one member suggested during a heated discussion. "Jake has a right to his property, and we should be supporting him, not attacking him." This sentiment resonated with a growing number of homeowners who believed that the essence of community lay in acceptance and understanding, rather than rigid adherence to rules. Among the neutral homeowners, perspectives varied widely. Some were sympathetic to Jake's plight, recognizing the importance of preserving his family legacy and the values that came with rural living. They admired his dedication to his farm and felt that Karen's campaign was an overreach. "It's his land, and he should be able to manage it as he sees fit," one neighbor remarked during a casual gathering. "We all have different lifestyles, and that diversity is what makes our community unique." Others, however, were more cautious, fearing that taking sides could lead to further division. They preferred to remain neutral, hoping that the conflict would resolve itself without their involvement. Amidst this backdrop of division, Jake found unexpected allies who rallied around him in support. Some of his closest friends, who had grown up alongside him, stood by his side, ready to lend a helping hand. They organized gatherings at the farm, inviting neighbors to come and see the improvements Jake had made, showcasing the beauty of his land and the hard work he had put into it. These gatherings became a platform for open dialogue, allowing community members to voice their opinions and concerns in a more relaxed setting. As people shared stories and laughter, the atmosphere shifted from one of tension to camaraderie, fostering a sense of unity that had been lacking. Additionally, Jake received support from local farmers and rural advocates who understood the challenges he faced. They reached out to him, offering advice on how to navigate the legal complexities of the HOA and sharing their own experiences of fighting for their rights as landowners. This network of support provided Jake with not only practical assistance, but also a renewed sense of purpose. He realized that he was not alone in his struggle. There were others who valued the same principles of independence and connection to the land. As the community continued to grapple with the conflict, it became clear that the situation was more than just a dispute between two individuals. It was a reflection of the broader tensions between differing lifestyles and values, a microcosm of the challenges faced by many communities in balancing tradition with modernity. The division among HOA members and the perspectives of neutral homeowners highlighted the complexity of the situation, while the support Jake received from unexpected allies underscored the resilience of community bonds. In the face of adversity, Jake's determination to protect his land and legacy resonated with many, igniting a conversation about what it truly meant to be part of a community, one that embraced diversity, fostered understanding, and celebrated the unique stories that each member brought to the table. As the conflict between Jake Mitchell and Karen Whitmore intensified, Karen found herself increasingly desperate to regain control over the situation. Her initial confidence began to wane as Jake's determination to stand his ground grew stronger, and the support he garnered from the community started to shift the narrative in his favor. Frustrated and feeling cornered, Karen resorted to increasingly aggressive tactics, determined to intimidate Jake into submission through legal means. One of her first moves was to escalate her complaints to the HOA board, demanding that they take immediate action against Jake. She meticulously compiled a dossier of alleged violations, complete with photographs and detailed accounts of what she deemed unacceptable. In her mind, this was not just a matter of property standards. It was a personal crusade to restore order and conformity to the neighborhood. "If the board doesn't act, I'll take this to the next level," she warned during a meeting, her voice laced with a sense of urgency. Her threats hung in the air, but the board members, already weary of the ongoing conflict, hesitated to take further action against Jake. Feeling that the HOA's response was insufficient, Karen decided to take matters into her own hands. In a move that many in the community found absurd, she hired a private investigator to gather information on Jake. The investigator was tasked with uncovering any potential violations or discrepancies that could be used against him. Karen believed that if she could find anything that could be construed as a legal infraction, it would bolster her case and force Jake to comply with her demands. "I need to know everything about him," she insisted, her eyes gleaming with determination. "If he's hiding something, we'll find it." The absurdity of her tactics became apparent to those who knew her. The idea of hiring a private investigator to surveil a neighbor over property disputes seemed excessive, even comical. Neighbors began to whisper about Karen's increasingly erratic behavior, questioning whether she had crossed a line from concerned citizen to obsessive antagonist. What's next? Is she going to hire a helicopter to monitor his farm? One neighbor joked, shaking their head in disbelief. The community began to see Karen not as a protector of standards, but as someone who had lost sight of reason in her quest for control. As the investigator began his work, Karen's paranoia only deepened. She started to scrutinize every aspect of Jake's life, convinced that he was somehow undermining her efforts. She would drive by his farm multiple times a day, taking notes on his activities and the changes he was making. Each time she spotted a neighbor visiting Jake or helping him with his farm, her frustration boiled over. "They're all in on it," she muttered to herself, convinced that a conspiracy was brewing against her. Her obsession with Jake's property consumed her thoughts, leading her to concoct increasingly elaborate theories about his intentions. In her desperation, Karen even attempted to intimidate Jake directly. She would show up unannounced at his farm, armed with her clipboard and a renewed sense of authority. "You know, Jake, I have my eyes on you," she would say, her tone dripping with condescension. "You might think you're getting away with this, but I have resources at my disposal." Jake, however, remained unfazed by her threats. He had grown accustomed to her tactics and saw them for what they were, desperate attempts to regain control over a situation that was slipping through her fingers. The more Karen escalated her campaign, the more absurd her actions appeared to those around her. Instead of intimidating Jake, she inadvertently strengthened his resolve and garnered sympathy from the community. Her tactics, once seen as a means to an end, began to backfire, painting her as the antagonist in a story that was quickly becoming a tale of resilience and community support for Jake. As Karen's desperation mounted, it became clear that her attempts to regain control were not only failing but also revealing the depths of her obsession, setting the stage for a confrontation that would challenge the very fabric of their community. The tension in the community reached a boiling point when an emergency HOA meeting was called to address the ongoing conflict between Jake Mitchell and Karen Whitmore. The meeting, held in the local community center, was packed with residents eager to voice their opinions and concerns. As neighbors filed in, the atmosphere buzzed with anticipation, a palpable sense of urgency hanging in the air. Many had grown weary of the relentless back and forth between Jake and Karen, and they were ready to take a stand. Karen, seated at the front of the room, exuded an air of confidence, but it was clear that her grip on the situation was slipping. She began the meeting by presenting her case against Jake, reiterating her complaints and emphasizing the need for strict adherence to HOA regulations. "We cannot allow one property owner to undermine the standards that we've all agreed to uphold," she declared, her voice firm. However, as she spoke, murmurs of dissent rippled through the crowd. Neighbors exchanged glances, some shaking their heads in disbelief at her increasingly aggressive tactics. One by one, community members began to voice their dissatisfaction with Karen's leadership. "We need to support our neighbors, not tear them down," one resident said, standing up to address the room. "Jake has been a part of this community for years, and his farm is a vital part of our heritage." The sentiment resonated with many, and soon others joined in, sharing their own experiences of feeling alienated by Karen's rigid enforcement of the rules. This isn't just about property standards. It's about community, another neighbor added, echoing the growing frustration with Karen's approach. As the discussion unfolded, it became increasingly clear that the tide was turning against Karen. The more she attempted to defend her actions, the more the community rallied around Jake. They began to share stories of their own interactions with him, highlighting his generosity and commitment to the land. "He's always been there to lend a hand when we needed it," one neighbor remarked. "We should be supporting him, not attacking him." The room erupted in applause, a clear signal that the community was ready to shift its support. Amidst the growing dissatisfaction with Karen's leadership, Jake's legal actions began to gain traction. He had been working closely with his attorney, gathering evidence to counter Karen's claims and prepare for any potential legal battles. As word spread about his proactive measures, more residents began to see him as a champion of their shared values. They admired his resilience and commitment to standing up for what he believed in, and many felt inspired to join his cause. By the end of the meeting, the atmosphere had transformed. What had started as a contentious gathering had turned into a rallying cry for community solidarity. The HOA board, recognizing the shift in sentiment, decided to take a step back from the conflict and allow for a more collaborative approach to resolving the issues at hand. They proposed a community forum where residents could discuss their concerns and work together to find solutions that respected both individual property rights and the collective vision for the neighborhood. As the meeting adjourned, Jake felt a wave of relief wash over him. The support he had received from his neighbors was overwhelming, and he realized that he was no longer fighting this battle alone. The community's shift in support marked a turning point in the conflict, one that would not only impact his fight against Karen but also redefine the very essence of their neighborhood. With renewed determination, Jake prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that he had the backing of a community that valued authenticity and connection over rigid conformity. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, Jake felt a sense of hope that he could protect his land and legacy, bolstered by the strength of those around him. The atmosphere in the community center was electric as residents gathered for what would be a pivotal HOA meeting, one that would determine the fate of Karen Whitmore's position within the association. The air was thick with anticipation, and the sense of unity among the attendees was palpable. After weeks of escalating tensions and a growing backlash against her leadership, the community was ready to take a stand. As the meeting commenced, the board members introduced the agenda, which included a vote of no confidence in Karen's leadership. The decision had not come lightly. It was the culmination of mounting dissatisfaction with her aggressive tactics and the division she had sown within the neighborhood. When the time came for the vote, the room fell silent. Residents were asked to raise their hands in favor of removing Karen from her position. As the count progressed, it became clear that the tide had turned decisively against her. The hands raised in support of the motion far outnumbered those in opposition. Karen's expression shifted from confidence to disbelief as the final tally was announced. "This is outrageous," she exclaimed, her voice rising in pitch. "You can't do this. I've dedicated myself to this community." Her protests fell on deaf ears as the board confirmed the decision, officially removing her from the HOA. The moment the vote was finalized, a wave of relief washed over the crowd. Applause erupted, echoing through the community center as neighbors embraced one another, celebrating the end of a tumultuous chapter. Many felt a renewed sense of hope for their community, believing that they could now move forward without the shadow of Karen's oppressive leadership looming over them. Jake, standing at the back of the room, felt a swell of gratitude and pride. The support he had received from his neighbors had not only helped him in his fight, but it also united the community in a way he had never imagined possible. As the cheers subsided, the board members took a moment to address the crowd. They expressed their commitment to fostering a more inclusive and supportive environment, one that would prioritize collaboration over conflict. "We need to remember that our strength lies in our diversity," one board member stated. "Let's work together to ensure that everyone feels valued and heard." The sentiment resonated deeply with the attendees, many of whom had felt marginalized during Karen's tenure. In the wake of her removal, the consequences of Karen's actions became increasingly evident. The community had been fractured by her relentless pursuit of conformity, and it would take time to heal the wounds she had inflicted. Many residents who had initially supported her began to reflect on their choices, realizing that they had allowed fear and intimidation to dictate their actions. The realization sparked conversations about the importance of standing up for one another and fostering a sense of belonging. Karen, on the other hand, was left to grapple with the fallout of her campaign against Jake. The loss of her position within the HOA was a significant blow to her sense of identity and purpose. She had prided herself on being a leader, but now she found herself isolated and ostracized. The community that once rallied around her was now united against her, and the realization stung deeply. In the days that followed, she attempted to reach out to some of her former supporters, but many were hesitant to engage, wary of her aggressive tactics and the divisive atmosphere she had created. As Jake continued to work on his farm, he felt a renewed sense of purpose and determination. The community's support had not only validated his fight, but had also reinforced the values he held dear. He knew that the road ahead would still have its challenges, but with the backing of his neighbors, he felt empowered to protect his land and legacy. The removal of Karen from the HOA marked a turning point not just for him, but for the entire community, signaling a commitment to inclusivity, understanding, and the celebration of their diverse ways of life. Together, they could rebuild and redefine what it meant to be a part of their neighborhood, ensuring that everyone's voice was heard and valued. The conflict between Jake Mitchell and Karen Whitmore serves as a powerful narrative about the importance of standing up for one's rights and the complexities of community dynamics. At its core, this story illustrates how a seemingly simple dispute over property standards can evolve into a larger battle over values, identity, and the essence of community. The key events that unfolded throughout this saga highlight the significance of resilience, unity, and the courage to confront injustice. Initially, Jake's idyllic life on his farm was disrupted by Karen's relentless campaign to enforce HOA regulations, which she believed were essential for maintaining the neighborhood's aesthetic. Her aggressive tactics, including formal complaints and legal threats, created a rift within the community, forcing residents to choose sides. However, as the conflict escalated, it became clear that Karen's approach was not only divisive but also detrimental to the very fabric of their neighborhood. The emergency HOA meeting marked a turning point, as community members began to voice their dissatisfaction with her leadership, ultimately leading to her removal from the HOA. One of the most significant lessons learned from this conflict is the importance of standing up for one's rights. Jake's determination to protect his family's legacy and his farm resonated with many in the community, inspiring them to rally around him. His story serves as a reminder that individuals have the power to challenge authority and advocate for their beliefs, even in the face of adversity. The support he received from neighbors demonstrated that when people come together, they can effect meaningful change and foster a sense of belonging. Moreover, the conflict encourages viewers to reflect on community dynamics and governance. It highlights the need for open dialogue and collaboration among residents, emphasizing that a healthy community thrives on inclusivity and understanding. The division that arose from Karen's rigid enforcement of HOA rules serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of allowing fear and conformity to dictate community interactions. Instead, it is essential for neighbors to engage in constructive conversations, recognizing that diverse perspectives can enrich their shared experiences. As we conclude this exploration of Jake and Karen's conflict, we invite you to consider the lessons learned and how they apply to your own community. Are there issues that require your voice? Are there opportunities for collaboration and understanding that can strengthen your neighborhood? By reflecting on these questions, you can contribute to a more harmonious and supportive environment for everyone. If you found this story compelling and insightful, we encourage you to subscribe to our channel for more content that delves into the complexities of community dynamics and the power of individual action. Don't forget to like this video and share it with friends and family who might benefit from these lessons. Together, we can foster a culture of awareness and engagement, empowering individuals to stand up for their rights and work collaboratively towards a brighter future for their communities. Thank you for joining us on this journey, and we look forward to bringing you more stories that inspire and provoke thought.